Good morning, everybody. My name is Tobin, and we're just going to jump right into it. So my proposal is called Psychological Longevity in Accordance with the Blue Zones. To understand my research proposal, you first have to understand what a blue zone is. There are these 5 areas across the world that were discovered by Dan Buettner and his team. He is a National Geographic journalist who, throughout his studies, noticed that there are specific areas of the world that have longer life expectancies and lower rates of chronic diseases than other places. These places have the highest rates of centenarians, which are people who live to be 100 plus years old. And in Akaria, Greece specifically, he noted that they have 20% less cancer and about half the markers for heart disease. So, of course, in these 5 areas, he wanted to understand why that was. They conducted some research studies on it, and they came up with 9 power principles that allowed these people to live such healthy and fulfilling lives. These have been condensed for my study purposes because 9 variables is a lot to study. So we narrowed it down to the main 3, which is diet, exercise, and social support. There are lots of studies that have been conducted on the physical health of these individuals and how they live to be so long. But what about their mental health? Because these 3 factors, diet, exercise, and social support, have been found to contribute positively to mental health. So with diet and mental health, this absolutely needs more research. Diet has pretty much almost always been associated with physical health, but there are ways it can affect mental health according to a study. The first is fluctuations in glucose levels. When your blood glucose levels are high after eating a lot of trans fat and empty carbohydrates, your body releases hormones to help regulate that blood sugar. And these hormones can actually contribute to negative changes in mood. Eating well can also contribute to lower inflammatory markers, which is better for your brain health and your cognitive health, and it lowers inflammation throughout the body. A little bit of inflammation is not a bad thing, but chronic inflammation is where you start having those cognitive health declines. Microbiome health is also very important. Worst case scenario, things get into the bloodstream that they shouldn't from the gut, from the microbiome, and they can also affect your cognitive health. This is the Blue Zone diet that I've shown on this screen. This shows that every day they eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts in areas like Sardinia and Italy, as well as Greece. They eat fish and seafood a few times per week for the omega-3s and the fatty acids. Daily to weekly, they have dairy, eggs, and poultry, but meats and sweets is pretty rare for them, which contributes to their healthy diet and these 3 findings. Here is the study credit. Now, social support is also a well-known contributor to positive mental health. Social connectedness consists of a support system, community involvement, and good relationships. In 83% of 6 different studies about this topic, having social support contributed to lower levels of depression. In 5 of 8 of these studies, smaller circles indicated higher depression rates, and in 8 of 9 studies, this is a literature review, by the way, in 8 of 9 studies, loneliness indicated a higher risk for a diagnosable depressive disorder upon follow-up. So it's pretty clear that these individuals in the blue zone have good social connectedness, especially in Okinawa, Japan. They are very socially connected. Family is very important to them, and they create a sense of purpose for themselves. In a lot of these areas, you'll notice that they create a sense of purpose for themselves, and it helps to contribute to their mental health. Now, physical exercise is also pretty widely recognized as being good for your mental health. In a study, they said that the first reason is exercising releases neurochemicals such as endorphins and opioids that contribute to positive mood changes as well as natural pain relief. It also regulates your HPA axis, which means that stress hormones like cortisol aren't getting distributed as much. Also, physical exercise improves sleep quality, which for people with mental health who are struggling with their mental health, sleep is very important so the brain can get the recovery that it needs. In the results of this study, there was a large to moderate effect size of using physical exercise as a therapeutic technique for individuals with mental disorders as opposed to no. So that's important to remember. And the blue zones, though, they are not like we are. They are not interconnected. They're not even always in a technological city. A lot of the times they have to walk to get to where they want to go. They are also, more outside. They're gardening, they're enjoying time in nature, they're stress relief, and so they are naturally incorporating more physical activity into their daily lives. Whereas for a lot of us, we spend a lot of our lives sitting at a desk or sitting in a car instead of walking and biking. The hypothesis for this study is that those elements of the Blue Zone lifestyle that improve physical longevity are also going to have an effect on the mental health of these individuals. So, my prediction is that the mental health of the individuals maintaining this lifestyle will trend positively along with physical health. So, there will be lower anxiety and depression. How I would like to go about conducting this study is I would like to take 150 to 200 individuals from the blue zones total across the 5 blue zones and 150 to 200 individuals from the USA. Now, the USA is very much not a blue zone lifestyle, and we have very high rates of chronic disease and mental disorders, so this would be a good group to put against the blue zones. These individuals should be at least 40 years of age so we can capture those centenarians. And of course, they will be varied genders and ethnicities due to the fact that it will be probably 6 to 10 locations across the world. Those with pre-diagnosed mental disorders will be disqualified from this study, not out of way of discrimination, but for the anxiety and depression screenings, we want a steady baseline. And for those with mental disorders, lifestyle intervention may not be an option, and medication would be what works best for them. So we are just not going to include that demographic. Now, the measures for this study, they will be 5 self-report surveys. The first is the Healthy Eating Index created by the USDA. It has 13 close-ended questions about your dietary habits. The second is a social interaction self-report that the team created for this project. It has 2 parts. The first is how often do you engage in social interaction? And what is the quality of your social interaction? Do you enjoy having those social interactions? The third is the IPAC, the International Physical Activity Questionnaire. This wants to study how often and what quality of exercise are you getting? Are you being deliberate in your exercise, or are you just counting your steps from work to home? PHQ-9 and GAD-7 are both widely accepted mental health orders. PHQ-9 is a screening for depression. GAD-7 is a screening for anxiety. They're both close-ended questions. All of these are close-ended questions. This is an example of the PHQ-9. You can see it has 9 different questions, and you rate the questions based on how you feel. Nearly every day, not at all. The procedure would be we'd partner with agencies from the blue zones and from America to find individuals who meet this criteria. Then we would mail out surveys to these individuals, which we believe is a good method for this age range. People in their 40s and up typically tend to prefer pen and paper over electronics, we found. This also allows for anonymity and lack of observer bias, since the mental health questions are very personal. And in this packet, you would contain consent, it'd have the 5 self-report, and stage 2 for a potential follow-up experiment. Now we'd receive those mailed back, we'd compile that data, and we'd interpret. For scoring, the HEI highest is 100, which is the best diet. The self-report, the highest score you can get is 25, which means you have the healthiest connections. IPAC is a comparative analysis. There's no numbers to break down necessarily. It's just comparing habits. PHQ-9 and GAD-7, these in their 20s are the highest you can get, but that means actually that the symptoms for you are the worst. And you're able to work through different sections and specific questions if you wanted to narrow down the reason based on the post-hoc. For statistical testing, I would like to do a MANOVA with the 2 groups, the blue zone, the USA, and 3 independent variables, which is diet, social connection, and exercise, cross-referenced with 2 dependent variables, the mental health, right? The depression and anxiety. Pardon me. Upon rejection of the null hypothesis, we can compare the univariate ANOVAs, which is the differences between these 2 groups and how these variables are all interacting. Of course, based on that result, we'd conduct a post hoc for effect size. Now, the goal of all this is to provide research-backed holistic alternatives to lessen big pharma dependence. Medication is great for mental health, but it does not work for everybody, and we'd like to provide different alternatives than medication. These lifestyle changes, the diet, exercise, social support, are all easily implementable, and we'd like to continue this gap in research, the causal research between physical health and mental health. Buettner's team has already begun efforts to incorporate that in America for physical health, But if this research is sound, we could also use this as treatment for mental health. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let me know what you think.